Well, hello everyone and welcome. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Leslie. Very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, we're just delighted to have you show us your work. Your work has been through quite a journey.
Yes, still is.
It'd be really interesting for me and for the audience, I'm sure, to listen to you about where that all started, because we've listened to some amazing stories of, people, starting off with their A levels, etc. Where did it all start for you?
Oh, goodness, Leslie. I suppose it started when I was 3, and I used to love drawing on the walls, which, of course, I wasn't allowed to do. So I used to.
Sophie, it's okay. Jane drew. Her children were drawing on the walls yesterday, and
Well, I used to shove a pencil up my sleeve and twist myself around in the curtains, and then when they thought I was just having fun in the curtains, I just used to get the pencil out and draw on the walls behind. So my father was quite creative, and so creative occupations just were part of my life, really. And he taught me perspective. He taught me how to draw and paint, and we always took the paints on holidays. But when it came to GCSE choice, my physics teacher, sorry, my careers teacher said, the boys ought to do physics because it'd be good for their careers, but doesn't matter about the girls, they can do art. So me being me, I took a huge objection to this and thought, I'm as good as any boy. So I gave up art and undertook physics. Was decision of my life, really. But there we go. So when I left,
I'm of the era as you, and they said to me a similar kind of thing. Oh, it doesn't matter, just be a secretary. Oh,
yeah,
goodness gracious, my life
yeah.
has been different because of that comment. I was like, I will never learn to type. I will never do anything that involves a typewriter.
Yeah, that's it. So when I left school, I went to uni and read history at Reading. And I suppose history is very much incorporated into my art in some way or other. Sometimes it's a personal history. But consequently, after that, I chose a career in HR, but I continued in all the spare time I had to do adult education classes in pottery, acrylics, watercolours, drawing, you name it, I did it. And so quietly, even though I spent 30 years as a HR manager, a bit more, I think, I carried on with the creative studies. But my real, if you like, start happened in 2007 when my son thought he wanted to do architecture and he needed his A-level in art. So I took him and a friend down to study the art A-level as an adult education course down in Folkestone. And they finished at the AS level and I carried on. So, that was really the start of everything for me. And I had a brilliant tutor named Laura Gethin-Smith. And while I was studying with her, she represented Britain at the Venice Biennial. And yeah, she was a hard edge abstract painter. And at first, of course, the inclination is to reject that. So sort of my early works were very fluid and expressionist. So I don't know if you can see, it's, postcards, it's very free flowing, splodgy kind of work. Was my kind of landscape drawings.
What medium were they?
Always acrylic. I absolutely love acrylics. I think you can correct mistakes, but it's
That's the beauty. Every
yeah,
artist has their own way.
yeah,
And
they
that's
do.
a great thing. And you make the acrylics work. Nick prefers the oils now.
Yeah,
That's it, isn't it?
yeah.
No one's right. We're all just being individuals.
I think I found the acrylics because often I used to come home from work, cook the family dinner, and then, you sit down and do some painting. And I sometimes did it in the night. So I needed to work swiftly and for it to dry quickly. I couldn't hang around for oils to dry. So that's where I learnt. And I used to do a lot of household decorating. So I used a household size brush. So that was my start. But under Laura's tuition, I guess my eyes were open to sort of more abstract work. And after finishing the A level, I carried on doing 3 years of personal study while working with her. And it was really her that encouraged me to go on to uni to do my fine art degree. So it took me a year to work out how to do that around work, but eventually I gave up my career, and that's the best thing I've ever done. So I went off under Kent Uni at West Kent College and did my art degree, and have never really looked back. But at college, I was very much encouraged to think conceptually about art. And whilst there was part of me that rejected that for a while, I definitely feel it suits my way of thinking. I think quite deeply about things that are going on in the world and around me, and having worked with people all my life, really, I think deeply about, why they're reacting to things and their emotions. And I feel the best way for me to bring all that together is in a conceptual way. So all my work, certainly my latest work, has meaning behind it, if only to me. So
Kent are quite well known, aren't they, for that conceptual approach? I think
yes,
I went to West Kent for a while as well, and I
yeah,
think they have, and that's great if it works for you. Again, it's if it works for you, isn't it?
it is. Yeah, I definitely got a split in my character between the very mathematical side. I like maths, and I like the logical reasoning behind life, the sense of control that helps to bring to us. But as you saw with my earlier work, I've got this very emotive side as well. So it's a case of what's going to come to the fore. So over time, I've gradually moved towards, I suppose, the more structured way of working. Whether I stay there or not, we're all on a journey. So never say never.
There's a lot of lines, aren't there? So I can see the two
Yes.
circular pieces behind you, and then the
Yeah,
two
well,
square pieces.
I started to work with thread and fishing line, doing different sculptures at college, and I suddenly found a way of working with thread over glass. And to me, the glass sort of represents the fragility that we all experience in life. This year is a big, obvious for that.
It's been a
And
difficult year, and I'm sure Jane won't mind me sharing with everyone the fact that she's had quite a difficult year, and she actually lost her husband at the
yeah,
beginning of lockdown. So that's been a very challenging year for you, and life is
yes.
fragile, but that makes it so vital and so important, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, everything comes into your art as an artist. So, it may be too soon to really process some of that, but it's inevitable. It's going to come out. So, yes, behind me,
It'd be interesting to see
don't know
these.
how well you can really see it, but there's, if I take the computer maybe a little nearer,
Perfect.
these are threads wrapped around glass.
Can you leave the computer on the top of the table there?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
focus, but it's obviously trying to find its focus as you're moving. There we go.
Okay.
Yes, we can see those quite clearly now.
So if I talk a little bit about the red thread circle,
Yes.
so the whole of my art is about human connection, whether that's with our environment, or whether that's cityscapes or landscapes. It's connection with our memories and our past, you know, where we've come from, our history, and also our connection, obviously, to each other. So the red threads represent my bloodline connection through the female line. So I started to look at blood groupings and how essentially we're all a real mix, all of us. So there's, you know, anyone who's had a DNA analysis will know they're a real mix of different blood groups and where they come from in history. So behind the red thread are all different colours of threads, going from brown to sort of deeper and deeper reds to brighter, and each layer represents a female line in my family. So the very bright thread, if I bring it over, the very bright thread, I'm not sure how well because of the reflection at the front, is my daughter.
Wow.
So and it's bright and metallic thread because that's how she is. She's bright and very, yeah, sorry.
Perfect.
So
yeah. So that
and
was all about bloodlines, and it comes right from historically. So that's how you're bringing the history and the connectivity through that particular piece of work. What about the black one?
The black one is a slightly different concept that came from me looking at how we choose to communicate now, which is obviously a lot, especially now over the internet, social media, and we all use social media and connection in some way without really realising what it might be opening us up to. I think we're perhaps becoming more aware. So obviously we give out quite a lot of information. We don't know where that goes. So I started to look at the dark web, and that's how the black sort of web-like threads came over. There's actually a needle buried in the thread somewhere, and that's, you know, how the authorities try to find yeah, there's too much reflection, I think, to be able to really see it.
You've exhibited these though, haven't you? So these have been exhibited, these pieces?
Yes, they have. Yes, definitely.
Where were they exhibited?
Well, they've been exhibited in several places. They've been up to London. I was lucky enough when I finished my degree to get a painting into the RA, and so that gave me a few openings in London. So they've been exhibited there as well as locally. So
you showed them in, did you show them in the gallery in Tenterden as well?
I did, yes, yeah, with the Tenterden artists, they were in there.
That's interesting, isn't it? You're saying, you know, that opportunity by getting a piece of work into the RA, that galleries go there, a bit like, you know, they used to come to the Pure shows before, you know, we stopped doing them because of lockdown, and that gave you, because people are always saying to me, I want to get into a gallery, and it's just not that easy, but there are some actual you know, routes to market that are quite recognised, and getting into London shows like at the Mall and in the RA is one of those that, you know, the galleries do go round and they do find you. So that was great. So you showed this work as a consequence, even though this wasn't the work that you had in the RA.
No, it wasn't. No, the work I had in the RA was Dover in Blue, which I've got here. But as you can see, that was my painting work.
Oh right, yes.
So
we're getting quite a lot of reflection from the screen.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that was better. That's the problem with showing, and that's something we're going to have to think about as we show our work digitally, is you always think about how to photograph your work before the glass goes on, don't you? And I think what we're going to have to consider is, you know, showing work without it being behind glass so that you don't get all the reflection. But yeah,
yes.
these are stunning. So you did you've got the dark web. I love that story, and the bloodlines. And then
Yes.
another one.
Yeah, there's a third one, which again comes from the idea of social media, really.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably a better picture, obviously, in the magazine of that one, but it's all brightly coloured threads. But the conceptual idea behind this was, we think the world is connected, but as we know, there's huge parts of the world that aren't connected. And at the point I did that, it was about 40% of the world was not connected, either because their governments didn't allow it or because they didn't have the technology. So we all use it thinking we're globally connected, but we're not globally connected just yet.
Yeah, there's big
Yeah.
swathes who are still not privileged
Yes.
to do that.
So there's very vibrant threads to it, and they're all multicoloured, but behind it is a black base layer. And the amount of thread I use directly relates to the circumference of the world, and a mathematical formula to the percentage of the world that isn't connected formed the black base layer. So that's how anal I can get about my homework.
You really have retained that physics thing, haven't you?
Yeah, I know. It had to come in useful somehow, didn't it?
I love that though, because it's a completely different approach. Your approach is so refreshing, and it's so different, and that's what makes the work so interesting on so many levels. I mean, you look at it and you just get the energy, and you just know that there's something deeper here, but you need it explained. You do need that explained to really understand,
Yes, of course, it's something an artist doesn't like to do, because you want your viewer to bring their own meaning and interpretation to it. But I do know from so many exhibitions that I've done that people really do like to know where it's come from. Yeah, so
Well, all you creatives are individuals, and with you, the story, the narrative is really important. We were talking about this earlier, about the story, and Jane was telling me that she's been reading about Picasso and helping her, and that's been helping her to be a lot more decisive about her story. So I can't wait to see some of the storytelling that we're going to get to go with the work. So as
yes,
we go round on the wall, there's some more pieces that are now not
yeah.
stitched, are they? Or do they stitch?
These are, if I move to this one, which I don't know if it will focus. I'm looking at the blue one.
Yes.
So you can see these are all drawn lines.
Yes.
On it. So it's very obvious where that has come from. It's come from my thread work, the whole idea of it. And the idea is to try and find behind it is my idea of connection with landscape.
Right.
But the thread work over it is largely obscuring the landscape. And I think I'm trying to say that's what technology does for us, that we're so focused on social media, we're not really looking at the landscape anymore, and yet we need that connection to it. So when we get it, we recognise the need for it, and if anything, this year has shown us that. So I started to do a series of work, but using the drawn line, and this really took a further development. So these lines are much bolder and this for me, has meaning pertaining to the world is in a balance, and it's threatening. It's suspended at the moment as to how humans respond to the threat of climate change and everything. So that's where that work came from. And then these are very similar, the smaller sort of yellow and grey ones, inspired by a sundial at Herstmanslow, actually. So the idea of it is, time. So these represent sort of seasonal change and So if I swing round, there's the other one. So this is summer, but we've got winter is coming, as they say. So
intriguing, because again, the physics is still there. This early
yeah,
influence, the physics is still there in your work. That's incredible.
yeah, it is that logical mathematical side that comes out.
Yeah.
And then obviously we hit the period when my husband was really ill, and so I suddenly moved to these two paintings. So there's trying to get the camera to show where I want it to. One's in the magazine.
Right, so people can see the magazine. I could actually show people in the magazine.
Yeah.
If that would be easier. Could I do that? Let me
show. Yeah, you can show the magazine. Yeah.
Show you in the magazine. The ART360 magazine. And then it'll be easier to show you Jane Cordery. There we are. Right, so I'm going to put this up onto the big screen then, and we'll give this the screen, and you can talk about it, because then you've got the clarity, haven't you? So
yes.
You've got the three pieces. You've got the stitch, and then the balance, as you're saying about, you know, the world is in balance. You know what's going to happen. And then, as you say, the painting. So yeah, talk us through the painting.
Okay, the painting, which is a mix of acrylic and pastel and pen and charcoal, so very much mixed media. This was a very poignant moment, and we'd just left King's College Hospital, and we'd learnt that my husband's illness was going to be terminal. And so you can imagine the disarray of thinking at the time. And as we were waiting on the station to go home on the platform, I could just see the glass buildings of London around me, and this sort of beautiful sky that was so blue that you almost didn't see the buildings, because there was just this reflection of the sky upon them. And it just said, you know, there is still life, there's still hope there. So that's how we chose to carry on living life until the very end. And so
it's the shard.
I don't think it was the shard, actually. I mean, it's like with every artist. I work very much not from photographs, but from memories in my head when I'm not working conceptually. So it's the emotion within, and it's a poor capture to me of what I actually saw. And obviously, as we waited, you know, there was this glorious sunset, and so that produced the orange one as well.
Yeah, it's so hopeful. It's so optimistic. Those colours and the dynamic lines like shooting up. It's so optimistic, and I know you carried that through the whole of Roland's illness. That optimism, and as did he. You said to me, you know, how impressed you were with how he also, you know, carried himself.
Yes, I think that's it. You just have to be positive all the time. And
during that time, you found other ways of working, didn't you?
I did, because having to sit next to him for long periods of time to keep him company.
You don't want me.
That's all right. I'm very happy for you to take the screen, Leslie. Yeah, so I'd been reading, I think you mentioned the other day, Leslie, about Robin Dunbar.
Yes.
And his theory. So going back to communication and how we communicate together in our social groupings, he's a professor at Oxford, and he was working as an anthropologist and discovered that the size of primate groupings related to the size of the frontal cortex in our brain, which is obviously the part of the brain that we use to socialize together. And he extrapolated that out and said that humans can't really manage with more than 150 social connections. And so I'd been reading this, and so I thought, well, I could draw, but I needed very much a kind of rules and chance way of working, so I didn't have to think so much, and I could put it down and pick it up whenever Rowan needed my attention or needed something. And so I thought, well, what draws us to things together? And drawing pins do that. So I started to throw 3 drawing pins at a piece of paper, and Robin Dunbar said that really we group in 3s and we layer up on 3s, and so I drew 3 a connection between 3 drawing pins wherever they landed on the paper, and then built that up in different numbers, and it's produced some fascinating geometrical shapes and patterns that aren't pushed by my way of thinking. So they're like a very free way of art that sort of opens up a different dimension, really. And so this has become a part of a journey that I need to travel down in order to see where it goes, which is what artists do. So
a bit like your lockdown sketchbook.
Yes, yeah. So a piece of work, sort of. And if I grab one off my shelf, it'd probably be easier to show. So hold on a moment.
What I'll do while Jane's grabbing that is I'll just bring her website up as well. So Jane, I'm just going to bring the website up, Jane, as well, just so that people can. Just going to check. This is your, yes, it is.
Yeah. So it just produces a different way of working, and I've never worked with rules and chance before, and gradually I'm loosening off now that, you know, I don't have to look after Roland anymore. I'm loosening off the rules and working more instinctually, but it's a journey I just need to go down at the moment.
I absolutely can't wait to see the kind of work that comes out, because I absolutely adore everything that you've done up to this point, and the depth of meaning behind it is so important as well. Your work is important.
It is to me.
It's important to all of us. You're talking about our times, and that's what artists, you know, artists are here for very many different reasons, and we trade in emotion, don't we? And
we do.
It's about that very emotion, about the very light way we're only just holding on to it, and it could change at any minute. It's very tenuous. Tenuous thing about the time and quantum, and I see that it's very the fragility is what comes.
Yes.
The fragility of life. I'm just going to show up your website now, because I know you've done a lot of work on it, and I need to show people that you've done a lot of work on it. And this is where you can go if you're intrigued and you want to hear more about Jane, see more of Jane's work, and maybe buy some work from her. But she's done a lot of work on this website during the last short while.
Yes.
There's a lot of different work on here, so you can see the stitched work that we were just talking about, the bloodlines, and this one's the dark. Is that the dark web, or is that the other one? No, I think that's the dark.
No, that's the other one. Yes.
And then you've got the ones that you were saying about a lot more drawn pencil lines, and some of your earlier landscapes as well. So I can't wait to see you put up some of that, the new work as well onto here. And on the website, you've also got, you can go through and see Jane's CV, which I think is also really important, to see where her journey has taken her and where she's exhibited, etc. So contact details here. Website, obviously we're on, and Instagram, but that's also available on the magazine as well. So you can go to the magazine. So we've got some questions, Jane.
Yeah, sure. I'll do my best.
It's that time. So First question. Can you say a bit more about how you incorporate history into your art? And that's from Nick and Heather Gibb.
Okay. Well, obviously, history comes into it from a personal point of view. So when I was talking about my bloodlines, that's my family history. I did an early, because I also work in sculpture as well, which is very difficult to show in an artist studio. But I'm
Don't say
I
that.
was.
You've got some stuff to
Well, the painting Dover in Blue that was at the RA actually came out of a whole series of works that I was doing while I was undertaking my degree, where I focused on the war, and that was probably due to the commemoration of the First World War. So I related that back to my grandfather. So Dover in Blue is actually the idea of my grandfather embarking out to war. He must have been quite young, and I think he was quite excited about it. And I painted a much darker black and white painting of Dover, and that was him coming back, and that one has sold now.
Wow.
So
how does that feel when you, because these are so personal, how does that feel when you sell a painting that's so personal?
I was gutted the very first painting that I sold, which was a landscape. It was a path through snowy trees, and I was gutted at that, and I grieved for about a week, and then I thought, it's also so exciting, that somebody wants to put their hard-earned money and pay for something that's come out of your head. It's such a compliment. So there was the joy and the pleasure behind it, and it gives you a sense of motivation. And I suppose
most people watching who are artists.
I suppose I've sold about 60 paintings now. That's aside from prints, but most of them are landscape rather than this newer direction of work. And if I wanted, I suppose, just to sell, I'd stick to landscape. But something is saying in me, I'm on a journey and I need to go further. I need to see what I can do. And so I ended up making a trench ladder. And it was based on a line that came out of a book by Virginia Woolf called Jacob's Room. And I called it Jacob's Ladder because there's also a Jacob's ladder toy. And in each, so it was 9 foot high, which is the average height of a trench ladder. And it had different items embedded into each step. And Jacob's Room in Virginia Woolf's novel is all about a young boy growing to adulthood, and then, as was the case back then, he died in Flanders, and he was called Jacob Flanders. So he died in battle as a young man, and that was typical. So the first step had embedded into it a pheasant's feather, because in this country we breed pheasants to shoot them. And that's how mothers felt back then, that they were giving birth to sons just to have them grow up to be shot. And so each step had a very, or was it just a feather that a young boy has picked up from the beach? And that's how all the steps went. And there was even a penny on one that my grandfather wore around his neck in the war. It didn't actually save his life at any point, to my knowledge, but he did wear it round his neck.
He came back with a penny, so.
So it was a very.
Now then, where's that piece of work now?
That was sold the first time it was exhibited to a collector who just happened to. She's a painting restorer, actually. She restored the Van Gogh that got damaged. But she lives relatively locally, and she loved both Virginia Woolf and she collected items reminiscent of the Great War. So yes, so it's happily in her collection now.
Wow. That must have been a real like double-edged sword selling that.
Oh, it was. I mean, you know, just produce something for your sort of I think I was in my foundation year then, and to have it sell, you know, it's just amazing. Yeah.
Amazing, but sad
Yes.
as well because so personal.
Yes, I didn't really want to get rid of it, so I stuck what I thought was a really high price on it. So I never imagined it going. So yeah.
I always say to the artists when because the pricing question always comes up, and
Yeah.
I say you can go through all these modules, and this is in the foundation course as well. You can go through all the modules, but you always have to. You can't account for emotion, so you always have to apply the final acid test. So once you've done the model and you've come up with the price and you've decided, then you have to pretend you've sold it, and you have to go, I've sold it, and this is how much I've received for it, and then you say, how do I feel now? And if you feel sad, you need to increase the price. And you have to increase the price until the point is that you go, no, I'm okay with it now. And that's the kind of final moment in pricing. It's not a science, it's an art. And you can't remove the emotion from it because you're an artist and you're dealing in emotion.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. So
lesson learned. You
yes.
didn't buy enough price of it.
No, you could have literally knocked me over with a feather when it sold, but it was hard. It was hard to let go. You know, it's like a piece of you going, but you know, it's also this massive compliment. So.
Yeah, I mean, we all have an ego, and they make no bones about it. It's a lovely thing. It does definitely give us a little ego boost. It gives us a shot of adrenaline, and that's what kind of gives us a bit of motivation, doesn't it?
Yeah. So in a very contorted way, that's the answer. My history just comes into different things. Yeah.
So Nick and Heather, I've got another question, which is when you exhibit your work, how much of an explanation of what you are trying to represent do you put by each one?
I don't put an explanation by each piece of work. I give an overall statement. As you know, there's usually a private view, and if people want to ask me about my work, I'm very happy to give it. But there are some viewers that definitely just want to bring their own interpretation to the work. And in a way, that's why I produce work, so that people can either lose themselves in it or bring their own questions into it. In that way, you start to have and you start to have a dialogue with the work, and sometimes knowing the story behind it actually spoils it. So I don't know how many people will ever think of buying my black circle now they know it's about the dark web.
More because I know that, and I think that's the thing. When as a curator, I'm really intrigued by the stories, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing now, which is getting you all to talk to me and tell me the stories. You know, this is a very, very selfish situation here. Don't be too flattered. You know, I am. You know, this is as a curator to hear the stories just means that when I curate exhibitions, it makes it much more interesting because I'm trying to create a dialogue for the viewer with pieces of work. I'm trying to create a story, a narrative that drives them around and makes them stop and understand, you know, what's in front of them. And for us to hear the story, and as you say, not everyone wants to hear that, but actually, yeah, I do. I'm really interested, and I know a lot of people do as well. A lot of people are interested, but yeah, it's finding that happy balance, isn't it? It's finding that happy balance with saying enough but not too much, because you need to leave space.
Yes.
To lose themselves in it and find themselves within it. So yeah. So hopefully that's answered. So Sophie said, "Can we work together?" She loves your work.
Yeah, definitely. I'll work with anybody. Yeah, it's lovely to collaborate. So yes.
Jane is happy to collaborate with you.
Yeah,
Carol
definitely.
Perry, are the actual pins in these drawings? Have you left the actual pins in the drawings?
No, I haven't yet, but I am planning a series of. They will be 2D, but they'll have a 3D effect. So there will be pins and I don't know whether to use nails or needles. I'm still experimenting on that at the moment. So there will be in that. But no, that's I drew circles originally on some of them, so you can see little circles. So that represents the pinheads where they landed. But my more latter work is just drawing the triangles.
Mm. Yeah, so that's intriguing, isn't it? So there you are, Sophie. There's an opportunity there because Jane's still exploring. So I can
Yeah,
see, I can see how your work talks very much across various medium, and I can see that people would be very drawn to working with you because it's very dynamic. And I think as a teacher, I can see why Sophie's drawn to that. So Vincent sent you a very personal question here and message really. I remember your work from Tenterton Gallery days, and then you going off to study your degree in developing conceptual approaches. Your work has moved so far, marvelous. Would you say that in your journey, that is about being true to yourself and being happy to explore?
Yes, I think it was a struggle, and I had my tutors at college and to thank for the journey I went on. So that's Sam Herbert and James Brooks. Because to give up when you've just mastered and started to sell landscapes, and to hear all the compliments that people really love it, and the landscapes I used to paint, as I said, just came from memories within. So I hadn't got a clue what I was putting on the canvas. The paintings just came out of the paper. And so that's a very instinctual, releasing way to work. But that's totally using the eye. And because I suppose underneath it all, I am an academic in some way or other, not to use the mind at all meant I was missing something. But this transition to this more conceptual, hard edge, sort of line way of working was a real struggle for me. For ages, I just wouldn't accept it. I resisted it and kept going back to the landscapes. I felt very frustrated that my tutors had sent me down in that direction and confused all my art. But really, it was looking at the thread works and using Photoshop on them. I suddenly saw a totally different way of working that was exciting. And so I followed that. And then obviously another leap again, finding a different way of working through Roland's illness, produced yet another way of working. And I think as an artist, you think these twists and turns, you're sent down there for a reason. So, yeah.
As humans, we're sent down those rabbit holes.
Absolutely.
And
yes.
no matter what happens, it's happened for a reason. There's something for you to learn or to think about as you go down there. I know you've mentioned quite a few people, and I, that importance of having a mentor or a really good guide when you're in your journey. Do you think that's been important to you?
Oh, incredibly important. I wouldn't be doing the art that I'm doing today without the backing and commitment of those tutors, the amount of time and advice that they're prepared to give you. They're very, all three, well, all of them, I say three, but there's been other tutors as well at the college who have absolutely given you their time themselves to your own work. It's invaluable, really. Yeah.
I can't wait to see how that new work develops, and because as I say, I've just been watching you and seeing the thread work was amazing, and then the more like physics-based, science-based work was amazing, and I'm like, wow. When you started telling me about the random pins, I was like, I can't wait. I literally can't wait. Come on, Jane. Literally can't wait, because your work is so grounded in this, like it's fragile, but it's got this intellectual quality to it, and it's so important. And yeah, keep going, because we're all intrigued to see where you're going to go next in this journey. So thank you so much for sharing so much with us. It's been intriguing. and amazing. And I know everyone who's been watching has been really inspired as well by all of these comments down the side and the questions they've asked. So if you're interested in Jane's work, don't forget, go to the magazine. Got her email, her website. Go and have a little bit more look around her website. She's on Instagram and Facebook. You can contact her, and I'm sure you'll get a very good response, because she does like to sell.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Leslie. It's been terrific.
Thank you everyone for joining us again today. Tomorrow we are going to be meeting Bea Sanderson, who's a jeweler. So that's a completely different medium again. So yeah, as I say, this is a very, very selfish ART360 is a very selfish endeavour by me, because how lucky am I? I just get to chat to you all and really understand so much about you. And as a curator, that is just, you know, so important to me. So I'm very, very grateful to all of you for being so generous. Thank you, Nick. I think Nick's disappeared, so we can't bring Nick back. But thank you, Nick, for finishing off your amazing talk with us. And this will all be up on the website tomorrow morning, so anyone can watch back, and it's on Facebook as well and YouTube. So yeah, go back and have a look. I know I love listening to them during the day, because obviously I only catch a part of it when I am listening intently and interviewing you. So yeah, I love listening back to them. So this is going to just be amazing at the end of September, because I'm going to spend the whole of October just listening. And I think I'm seeing you tomorrow anyway, aren't I? Tomorrow morning? Is it tomorrow or next week?
It's next week. Monday, I think.
Monday.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I will see you then.
Yes.
And see everyone else tomorrow here, 5:30 for Bea Sanderson.
Yes. Thanks to everybody. Thank you.
And we'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Take care now. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.